Hey everybody, welcome to Cities of Blood podcast. I've got David Kulczyk, local crime historian and author here to talk about urban legends with us today. And I think we're going to start off with one that everybody's probably heard, but not many of you know that it has some factual basis here that started in Sacramento.
It's the only factual thing I've ever found about the story. But everybody's heard this story about the little boy goes to the bathroom, public restroom by himself for the first time, and he ends up getting his wiener cut off or he gets killed. And I heard that when I was a kid in Michigan. I heard that in the Netherlands. I've heard that in Seattle. Every place I've ever lived, I've always heard that this is a local story and always happened in a suburb of a major city. So I could never find out if that ever happened until my last research on this book, Sacramento's Forgotten Murders. It happened on February 5th, 1956 at K Street at the Studio Theater. These three brothers were watching Western films on a Sunday afternoon while their parents went and got something to eat and spent some time together. This little boy named Ronald Johnson, 7 years old, went to use the restroom, left his brothers behind, and this apprentice embalmer named Thomas Johnston, who was from, he was really huge too. He was from Montana, and he came here especially to be an apprentice embalmer. He followed him into the bathroom, tried to cut his eyes out. When he screamed, he started stabbing him in the throat. The manager of the place heard the commotion, grabbed a nightstick that he had hidden around and stopped the guy from leaving. It took a couple hours before they found his parents and stuff, and they ended up giving him the gas chamber. He was a twin, and his father came out from Montana and said that his twin sister is in college and she got all the brains, and he was so stupid that he got kicked out of the Navy.
Didn't have anything good to say about him.
His own father. And so they put him in the gas chamber a year or two later. But that really happened here. When I was doing my talk on this book at Time Tested Books, great store in Sacramento, I had two people come up to me and said that one went to school with those guys and another with the kids, and he said it was like a big story when they were that age, because they were all about these guys were all maybe in their 60s, 70s, and they're like, oh, I remember that, it was horrible, we were all afraid to go to the movie theaters.
I imagine after that, and probably since then, I don't know any parent who sends their kid under a certain age to the bathroom by themselves, let alone to the movies anymore.
Right.
But I do know what up until the 1980s even. I remember War Games, the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to see that in the theater as a kid when it first came out. And I remember my father and my brother were with me, and they wanted to see something else. They didn't want to see that nerd movie.
Yeah.
And I wanted
So you saw
I saw it by myself. I could have been 10, maybe less even, but certainly I was vulnerable. Anybody is at that age.
Yeah.
So scary stuff. Sacramento's boogeyman tried to cut the kid's eyes, huh?
Yeah, not bad.
It's terrible.
Yeah, he was a sick mofo, as they say.
I don't want to lambaste anybody who's involved in the death industry, but I guess just like priests, the priesthood and teaching and stuff like that, they attract pedophiles. If there's creeps out there or ghouls, they probably would be attracted to some place where they would have access to dead bodies. And,
yeah, I guess so, man. It's something I don't know much about. So.
it only because it's Sacramento and only because it's funeral homes that we're talking about, and a guy who worked in a funeral home, reminds me of Karen Greenlee.
Yeah.
And we know she worked at the Sacramento Memorial Mortuary or something like that.
Didn't she work at East Lawn?
No, she wasn't East Lawn. It was I think it was Sacramento Memorial Mortuary, and she's
on L and 21st over there.
No, I think she's the one that's outside. I don't think it's downtown.
Now we're sounding like old geezers.
Yeah.
No, it's over there by. That's not there anymore.
I'll double check and put it on this episode for everybody. Anybody who hasn't watched prior episodes, who has never heard of Karen Greenlee before, this is a woman who was arrested in 1979 for
having sex with cadavers.
Exactly. And so she actually stole a body during a funeral, disappeared with the hearse, and was found a day or two later in a nearby county by police officers with the hearse in an empty bottle of vodka, I think. And she was a drinker, and she, like Dave was just saying, she confessed to having, this is what always bothered me about her case, is she confessed to having sex with either 20 to 40 dead people. That's a huge discrepancy. You know? It's like, could have been 29, could have been 30. Okay. But 20 to 40, that's kind
of funny because, like, a lot of people haven't had that much sex with living people.
Right.
You know? It's like the average person has, so many sex partners, but it's not like in the 40s, especially with dead people. I wonder how many people she had sex with that were alive.
I wonder, yeah, that makes you really wonder. Probably one lost her virginity and hated it. I don't know.
I hope she's doing well.
Yeah, she's still around.
But talking about those things too, this is an urban legend in Sacramento that happened in the 70s where like 3 naked people climbed out of like a manhole or something or sewer access place, and they had chains and they were all dirty and stuff, and
this was
it was like 2 teenage boys and a female, and they popped up like on K Street, and they said that they were held captive in a catacomb underneath the city and were held as sex slaves, and it fell out of the paper like immediately because there's probably some pretty important people that were tied to it.
It's disturbing and fascinating at the same time. Anybody else who's familiar with Sacramento, K Street's a brick street, and it's well, for a while there, no cars were allowed to drive.
Yeah, for like 40 years.
Yeah, there were no cars allowed to drive down it. But what I think is more interesting is if you go to there's a there's the Crest has the bar that's underground, level, and then across from there used to be an arcade game place that had the vintage arcade game.
Yeah, is that still there?
It might be, and I think they were below street level too.
Right, they were too. There's that bar that was over there too, that the bands played down below street level. It was all bricks.
Yeah,
there's quite a few places like that.
Sacramento has a whole other level underneath the city that some businesses have utilized and finished off, and some of them haven't. So there are these abandoned tunnels or first floors of buildings that used to exist that have been built right on top of,
they raised the street to the second floor level.
So
they did that in Seattle too.
So, like you said, the idea of having an underground sex dungeon anywhere near K Street is possible. It's entirely possible. In fact, like you were saying, that it's if somebody who was going to set this up was wealthy and connected, like you were leading whatever to, they certainly wouldn't do it in the West End in the 70s, because that was the shithole of Sacramento, which is currently Old Sac. They would have done it, more towards the financial district or the Capitol, right? Capitol.
Yeah, they'd probably take their own private stairway from their office right into it. Because there's tunnels connecting the Capitol building with like the Senator hotels, and they don't use anymore. And supposedly there's a very large like catacomb place, like large enough to drive a semi-truck in, that they had psychedelic happenings in the late 60s in there.
This is like the Ken Kesey acid experiment.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah, because Sacramento has the San Francisco connection, where people from San Francisco would come to Sacramento to slum out,
hide away.
Yeah,
like the Symbionese Liberation Army, or even part of the Manson folks.
The Manson family, the SLA was out in the open. According to urban legend, they would go to the Buffalo. What was that? The Buffalo Bar or something? It's on like. It's like right next to the railroad tracks, I think on R or something.
Oh, where the old spaghetti factory kind of?
No, not there. Farther over. It's like an abandoned building now, but I think they're going to do something with it. But it's right next to the tracks between 19th and 20th. They were there all the time too. So,
yeah, I heard Squeaky Fromm had or I'd heard somebody, I think it was some of the Manson, she had either stayed or somewhere where she was at prior to, getting arrested for trying to assassinate President Ford, was somewhere over by Hamburger Mary's or something. And they had actually went in there and found the bullet that was missing from the chamber rolling around the floor. But I believe she
lived on T Street.
Did she?
Yeah, and up on the very top floor of this giant house. It has a rickety wooden stairway going up there. I went up there to see if I could talk to anybody that lived up there. And the stairs were so frightening that I couldn't go up. I turned around. Wow. They were rotted. And but a friend of mine told me that after Squeaky was arrested and her apartment was for up, a friend of his moved in there and it was all covered in like fingerprint dust and tape and all that. Yeah, they didn't do anything. He got like a deal on it. No one wanted to live there. Wow. And there was an old couch laying there inside. And so they wanted to get rid of the couch. When they picked it up, a 45
so that's the
pistol fell right out of the couch.
Oh, the pistol.
The pistol.
Wow.
And my friend was there. That's what he says. That's why this is urban legend. Yeah. And they said somebody threw it in the river. Got rid of it. They didn't want to. They were hippies and they didn't want to call the cops because then they'd be like, "Oh, you're part of it too,"
Yeah.
Because that's how it was. There was a war on fun. Bill Berg wrote about that in one of his books.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had this sheriff of Sacramento County just hated the hippies and stuff. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So nobody would cooperate with them. That's why the SLA walked around, totally like nothing.
That wasn't William J. McKinney, was it? The sheriff or? I know that I've heard that police station they named up here. I've heard that guy was not a very popular chief.
Yeah, there is this one here in Sacramento. This guy was a chief detective, and he was like everywhere in the papers and stuff. A photo of him, it looks like one of those Photoshop things because he looks like a totally modern guy, and. In pictures of 1930 something,
like time travelers.
Yeah, he's kind of looks like he was wearing this long leather coat and had just a different hat than everybody else was wearing. Yeah. Like a stiff brim hat, and he kind of looked. He was looking right up into the camera too in this picture. Kind of has almost an angelic face, but from what I could piece together, and this stuff is stuff that'll never come out. But he owned some property in Pioneers in Old Sac, back when it was prostitutes and brothels and underground gambling and heroin dealing and stuff. And he ended up getting killed not far from here. He was talking to another cop at 3 a.m, out in the middle of nowhere, and he got hit by a taxi cab. Out in the middle of nowhere. And he wasn't very old either. He had a house on Watt Avenue too that's no longer there. It's all dust or,
How the hell do you not see 2 cop cars?
That's what I mean, He got kind of whacked, if you ask me.
That is whack. Yeah. Well, didn't you say that Old Sac was once owned all by police officers? Mm-hmm. So it almost reminds me of that, Cop Town or Copville. What is that one with Sylvester Stallone?
Cop Town. Copland.
Copland,
yeah. That was a good movie.
It was a good movie.
Yeah, it was the best thing Sylvester Stallone was ever in.
Since Rocky,
Yeah, not even better than that,
He played.
He wasn't playing Rocky in it.
Well, he plays vulnerable really well. Mm-hmm. That's Stallone's thing, and that's why the Rocky thing was so good because he played that guy that you could feel sorry for.
I got to give him the finger while he was making Assassin. They were filming it in Seattle, and they were at this one building.
Yeah,
it's 60-story building that I went into 20 times a day. I was a bike messenger. And is right downtown too, right on Pike Street. And they were filming an elevator scene where Sylvester Stallone just comes out and then looks over here and goes like that. And that's all. Yeah. They could have done that on a Saturday. They could have done that on a Sunday. They picked a weekday. And so, it was amusing at first. And then after a while, after the third day of him stopping traffic and all that, people were starting to get a little angry about it. So I'd go there and make a delivery, and there's just the whole lobby is full of people. They went out for their break at 10 o'clock, and then came back, and they weren't allowed to go up in their elevators back to work
because they had it blocked off.
There were thousands of people. People are getting kind of grumpy, and there's this balcony atrium right here in Sylvester Stallone had to look like right at me. Like I came up like some other messengers like, hey, what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
And he had to like look right at us for his camera thing, and so I just totally flipped him off. I mean, I was going like this, you know, and
That's funny.
and after it was a take, he's like,
Who's that guy?
talk to somebody, like that guy over there. It's like, he ain't doing nothing to me, you know. This one guy I worked with, they stopped people from crossing the street, and he was like this really good-natured guy. Just went out to see it, and then he got like totally like he came back to the office all pissed off because it was like 20 minutes they wouldn't let anybody cross the street, and people just started walking instead. You know, it's like, I don't care. And between takes, Stallone would sit in a limousine parked outside.
You know, it reminds me of, you ever see that movie 28 Days Later?
Yeah.
Yeah, or 28 Days, whatever the first one was. When they show that opening shot of London and it looks empty,
Yeah.
like, how the hell did they, you know, especially when the sun was up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it might have been just sunrise, but still, people are working at like 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah, they picked like Sunday mornings, you know?
Yeah.
Like a holiday, too.
Yeah.
That's how they get those shots. There's a movie on the beach Stanley Kramer made in the 50s or early 60s. And it's about the world ended and this nuclear submarine was out of contact and they had to look. And the thing where they looked through a periscope at like Manhattan, and you could see right up the street, and there was just like nobody. And what they did is they filmed it on like the
Christmas morning.
Yeah, Christmas morning or something like that. You know, like just as soon as the sun came up, and that.
Wow.
And same thing with Melbourne, Australia, and someone said that if they were going to film, someone that was in that movie said if they were going to film about being somewhere at the end of the world, Melbourne is the best place.
There was.
Because they thought it was boring. I have friends in Melbourne.
Sorry, Melbourne.
Yeah, they won't see this.
Yeah. Believe it or not, they showed my Made in the Shade movie in Australia.
Yeah. Wow, cool.
I was really surprised. I got a nonprofit email from a nonprofit down there saying that they were planning to plant 30,000 trees, and everything there has the Queen in the name somewhere.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I can't think of the name right now, but that's
South Queensland's Wales or
something like that. It's,
yeah.
You know, but cool stuff. Back on the urban legend thing, have you heard of a water witch or a water spirit that's in the American River around here?
No.
It's just a guy who did a local film about it, and I can't think of the name they had for it, but it was some type of water spirit or something. And it reminds me of Camp Pollock, because as many times as I've been down there, and that used to be a Boy Scout camp, I've never seen, I can't say never, I've seen one guy, some middle-aged guy, like come out of the water over there. And I think that's because he lived in the trailer park that's right next to the thing. But otherwise, I've never seen anybody swim in the American River by there.
Well, that's like a backwater over there, too. It's like a flood area.
Yeah.
So it's not...
It's a beautiful park.
Yeah.
It used to, you know, and it's not a lot of people know it's there. Maybe that's what it is, but I guess...
It's always too hot to go there when you think about it.
Well, nowadays now that it's legal to camp in parks, you know, in California anyway, the homeless have taken over pretty much that whole thing.
Oh, good.
It's so anybody who wants to go camping, you don't have to leave Sacramento anymore, and you don't have to pay anymore. It's free to camp wherever you want, inside any park you want, and I encourage you to go out there and camp in a public park. The police can't throw you out anymore. So
you know what they should do, and like the homeless problem in Sacramento goes back to the very start of Sacramento. It's always had hobos and homeless and people, you know, trying to get their break and all that. It's the end of the line. That's where the railroad ended. It was the end of the line. So you can look at newspapers from the 1870s and they'll say, "What are we going to do about this homeless situation? These hobos." And those guys were veterans of the Civil War.
Ex-miners, you know, it turns into ranch hands, into every other thing. That's from what Bill Berg and a couple other people have told me, is that I guess there was something like 3,000 hotel rooms in Old Sac, in what's now Old Sac, used to be the West End.
The West End, yeah.
And they were like $1 a night type flop house type
flop
places.
houses.
Yeah.
But that kept the homeless off the street.
Kept the homeless off the street for $1 a night. You go get a place, and as soon as they leveled that, suddenly you could see this huge population that had nowhere to go at night. And you're right, we've been suffering with it ever since.
Well, that happened in Seattle too. Is that what happened? Is like maybe in 1970 there was one of those hotels caught on fire, and killed like 20 people. And they were all like, the homeless people basically. And so because of that, they seriously like updated fire laws, and they condemned a whole bunch of buildings, tore them down, built their skyscrapers there when they had their building boom in the 70s, because they had one in the 70s. So.
Well, yeah, that's when...
that's when all the homeless came, because they got rid of... Like Pioneer Square, that was all flea bag hotels.
That whole main drag to the Capitol right there. Yeah, from the bridge to the Capitol right there. That was all built up in the 70s because it was leveled from 1959 to 1969. Yeah. It was 10 years of just leveling homes up there and building the freeways in. And so, it seems like we weren't the only city who did that.
No, it happened all over the place. In Seattle, they were supposed to take the freeway was supposed to go on the other side of Seattle, like a peninsula like that. Yeah. But that went through like the nice, rich neighborhood. And so they put it right through the middle of downtown instead.
They initially...
It would have went through like Kurt Cobain's old house, like that neighborhood, which is like...
Nice.
Yeah, it's...
Imagine. I saw the home only on the
It's old money too, over there.
They originally the plan. Some of the people wanted the freeway to go to West Sac. Yeah. On the West Sac side, but it was, believe it or not, it was the business owners in downtown that fought against that, because they thought having the freeway go to West Sac, that everybody would bypass the city of Sacramento and nobody would ever stop here again. Yeah. The reality of it is nobody stops inside downtown Sacramento for gas. Yeah. There's I'll say maybe 5 gas stations in the whole of downtown, and you don't want to use any one of them because the prices are more expensive than anywhere on the other side of the river anywhere. Yeah, and they're always packed. It's just
there's like 3, maybe 4.
Yeah,
I think of. Yeah.
So urban legend wise, I guess I can go back to some classics. When I was a kid, I remember hearing Bloody Mary. You look in the mirror and you have to buy a single candlelight and say Bloody Mary 13 times, and she'd supposedly come out of the mirror and scratch your face up like that. That was her whole thing. And then I remember the movies they did. The Candyman thing was supposedly the same premise, only he came out with a hook and would gut you. So they raised the stakes a little bit on that. Excuse me, no, that's my phone.
Is that what that was?
Yeah, my phone. This is a good story.
You turned it off? Jeez.
No, I didn't. My phone sounds Elza put on here is a whistle and a fart. And so I thought it was funny, but it turns out I was at a party that the Sacramento Tree Foundation put on, and there were some bigwigs, some local Sacramento high rollers there, and one of them was the wife of a senator. And so anyways, they're having this big speech. It was a going away party for one of their staff, and everything's getting real emotional, and we're going to miss you so much, and we love you and all this, and also and everybody in the room just looks right at me, and I'm,
oh man,
yeah, it was the phone. Yeah. So yeah, the Bloody Mary thing, I remember doing that as a kid with my cousin Dawn. Hey Dawn, I know she watches. And then not having candles, or not being allowed to light candles because we were little kids. So we were like yelling, begging our Uncle Jeff and our Aunt Nancy to get us a candle, and they wouldn't do it. So Jeff comes out and he puts like the dimmer, because it's the 70s, right? He's got the classic dimmer light with the fake candelabra thing. That's about one candle. Fun stuff.
We had my uncle had a resort outside of Paw Paw, Michigan, and so family would get together there. They'd all rent cabins and stuff, And the person that originally owned it was cremated and put into this cairn. And my brother, my cousins, they're all like the same age, about 8 years older than me. They made up a story that the guy's name was Crazy Man Wilson, and that he'd come back to kill the kids and stuff like that, And so I had like 30-something first cousins, and there's a bunch of us, like probably 12 of us. Maybe we were like 4 years apart in age. It's like we're all like between 8 and 14 or something. It's like 10 of us, and my brother, my cousins, the older guys, found like this nativity scene in the barn. You know, it's of like St. Joseph, and he's holding his staff and looking scary.
Yeah.
And we were watching some scary movie. It was like Saturday night at the movies or something.
Yeah.
So we were all in this, you know, popcorn and all that stuff, like 10 of us kids.
Yeah.
And he stuck it in the window and put a flashlight under it.
Scared the crap out of you.
Oh, we all took off running. It was just like, you know, our parents were all like, what the hell's going on here? You know, they wanted... It's like 10 kids screaming, running out the house in the entry, you know.
I think the worst thing we ever did, or I remember doing was, you know, mischief night, or you guys.
Yeah, gate night.
Gate
we
night.
call it gate night in
It's,
northern Michigan, Devil's Night in Detroit.
We had mischief night in New Jersey, and I remember going out to my cousins who lived out in the country, like you're talking about, and so we decided to go pumpkin smashing. You know, and that was, you know, you figure out what that is yourself.
Yeah.
So we go up and we're lurking around, and out in the country, you know, the houses aren't on top of each other, so
Right.
they're a little bit away from each other. And so we see this one house, and they got this pumpkin that looks like an award winner. You know, I mean, this was it looked like it won the country blue ribbon type thing, and it was bigger than both of us, and they had it carved out and everything else. This is Trixie the conspiracy dog. And so me and my cousin, we see this thing, and it's just like a beacon. It's calling us. You know? So we go running up there, and it took both of us to lift the thing, and we could barely lift it, and we just basically hurled it down. Lay down. We hurled it down the steps of this guy's place, and it you know, just completely came apart all over. The screen door was like, the door was open with a screen door kind of thing, because I guess it was a warm night, you know, and they were expecting trick-or-treaters. And the guy like stumbles out the door as we're doing this and sees it, and he flips and starts chasing us, right? We're quick and it's dark, so we ditch into the woods, and we come out, like these streets kind of come across, we almost like cut across this, you know, through these woods, and then up out on another street. And they were a group of kids that weren't my friends, they were my cousin's friends, you know, because that wasn't my neighborhood. And they're all sitting on the back of this car, hanging out, bullshitting, right? So as we come out on the street, we see these kids sitting on the back of this car, and we didn't even slow down. As we're running past them, we're like, you better run. And they're yelling at us, we didn't do nothing, fuck you guys, that type of thing. We're not going to run. We ran past them and dove into the woods and dove into, like, you know, this ditch on the side of the road, and it was pitch black, and we just so that we could look back and see where he was. And we saw him, and we saw the kids on the back of the car, and we saw him run up to the back of the car and start beating the shit out of all these fucking... I'm not joking. He, like, cracks one, slams one over the hood of the car. Next thing you know, the parents are coming out of that house. It was like a street brawl, and we're over here.
Oh, man, you guys started
We started the whole thing just by smashing this guy's pumpkin.
Behave.
We're going to have to put the conspiracy... Trixie! You're going in the room.
This is like 1977. They had one of those realistic old man masks, right?
Yeah.
Somebody at this party had it. And it was kind of out in the country, kind of suburban. We had a fire and a keg and stuff. And maybe about 30 people, you know. It was nice. They had food and stuff. And so I put on that mask. It was just right about when it got dark. And I just started being a clown, you know. And there's some nice corn-fed Ohio girls there. This is in Ohio. And I was making all kinds of rude old man jokes and stuff, just cracking up everybody, you know. And the girls, they liked it too. I was being funny, you know, in front of the campfire. And so I kind of walk away, and the guy that owned the mask was like, "Oh man, give me my mask. This is great. I got to do it too." Oh, yeah. He puts the mask on. He walks up, and those girls are waiting. They each had a pitcher of beer, and they threw it on him, thinking it was me. It was great.
That's pretty funny. Oh yeah, let me try it. There you go.
There you go, man. But the urban legends, you know, after World War II, all these guys were trying to get home. And like Oakland's railroad station would have like over 50,000 soldiers or servicemen missing their trains.
Really?
Every night. Same thing with Sacramento. It was like up to 20,000 guys would be stranded overnight. These are guys that just came back from sitting on a ship for 2 weeks, coming back from the war zones in the Pacific. Now they're trying to figure out, how do I get back to, you know, Memphis? And so there was like hotels were all booked and everything. So there would be, the cops just quit doing anything. unless you were like committing murder or something like that.
Oh, wow.
They just stayed away. They were so outnumbered. And these guys were all trained killers. On New Year's Eve, 1946, New Year's Day, 1940, last day of 1945, there were like thousands of soldiers stranded here again. And they built a bonfire at 5th and K. Like massive bonfire in the middle of the intersection.
Holy shit.
And the cops didn't do a thing about it. They just let everybody blow off steam.
That was here at Sac?
Yeah, here in Sac.
Wow. Reminds me almost like the Zoot Suit riots type thing. You know, that way all the servicemen started beating up the Chicanos.
Yeah, well, people weren't beating. They were mostly just getting too drunk.
Yeah.
And, hookers from all over California came out here too,
Right. The gold rush.
Yeah,
Yeah, the hoe rush.
Because, there are all these guys, they hadn't been laid in years.
No kidding.
There's brisk business. That's why the cops are just like, you gotta really severely hurt somebody to get arrested right now. Because or else we'd be arresting everybody.
Well, yeah, there probably wasn't enough cells, enough room to...
Well, yeah. Yeah, and what are you going to do? Arrest, some guy who just a couple of weeks ago was in Iwo Jima killing hand-to-hand combat with the enemy, and they're going to be afraid of some cop that got out of the war. And
it also goes to show what a transportation hub Sacramento is.
Yeah.
That you would have that many people stranded, down there waiting for a ride out of Sacramento.
Yeah. Well, the war did a lot of weird things. People say, like, I've been asked, how many people died in, these houses? Like, every apartment in Sacramento, there must have been somebody died in. And yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's true.
It's any city of any age.
Yeah.
Imagine New York. I mean, unless you live in a brand new building, you're almost guaranteed that somebody's going to have died in that house over the years, in front of it, outside of it, around it.
Yeah.
Chances it could have been the Triangle Shirt Fire Factory building, for all you know.
Yeah, right. Well, they have a plaque there now.
Do they have now? So.
But yeah, I know. It's like there's, just like that new subdivision, McKinley Village they're building over there. That was like the dump, and that's where a lot of people probably just died there just for being old. Yeah. It was like the backwater of the river and swampy area.
Yeah. Trying to think of any other urban legends right off the top of my head. And, other than like the Holy of Holies, which is Bigfoot.
I heard somebody tell some story. I was thinking about this because we talked about it yesterday. But there is some galloping horse story. Like you said about on Fair Oaks.
Fair Oaks Blvd, yeah.
East of Watt.
Yep. There's a stretch where there have been a lot of car accidents, and they've almost always ended up running into the trees in the center of the road, type thing. And so much so that they wanted to take the trees down, but now they built a guardrail. And
the rich people complain.
But yeah,
that gets paved like every other year.
It's a beautiful road.
I don't know, man. They pave my street like every 15 years.
Yeah,
they get gold reflectors. And
that is a very wealthy area.
Yeah,
if you make a right turn off of Willerga or anything like that, and you go back there, you see some of those gorgeous homes.
Yeah, right or left. And they're like houses you'd see in Beverly Hills.
Yeah. The ones that go down to the river, I love how landscaped everything is. It's not flat like a lot of the other areas are.
Yeah.
But
those are people that have stables and stuff.
Exactly.
It's like crazy super rich.
Makes sense with the horse thing is that I know this person, firsthand, and they are reliable. Is that this person was driving home one night from college, I think, and made a right on Fair Oaks Blvd, and just not too far up, literally had slammed on the brakes and locked her car up because of a herd of horses that ran past it, and only it wasn't a herd of horses, it was a ghost herd.
Oh, the ghost!
The ghost herd.
Ghost!
But,
but maybe it was really horses that escaped.
That's true.
And they could have been a little stoned and
there's a couple
buzzed and
there's different possibilities.
Getting out of class, you burn one while you're driving.
There are different possibilities. One, like you said, it's always been horse country.
Yeah.
So there were people with stables there in the 70s. There are people there with stables now.
Yeah.
However, if you go back 100 years, 150 years, for 50 years period, this was the largest thoroughbred horse farm in the world. And Hagen had a broodmare herd of broodmares, over 500 of them that would just run the property. So that's the other, explanation is if it was a ghost herd, it would be the ghost herd of Hagen's broodmares.
What's a broodmare?
These were mares of
females that had
just for breeding. Just for breeding. They did not.
Okay, so they just leave them out there, and then they go and grab the colts.
Yeah, well, if you race a female horse, you want to race her till she's maybe 4, maybe 5 or 6, because after that she becomes more valuable. If she's won any races, especially during that time period, she becomes much more valuable as a broodmare at that point. And so yeah, or you could have just horses that come from great lineage and have never raced, and he's pulling them from that. But California's first Kentucky Derby winner, Ben Ali, was trained here.
Yeah,
that horse was actually born in Tennessee, I believe, but he was trained here. And Salvador, I think, was the Prince of Milers, was born and raised here, and is actually buried somewhere on the property here. So yeah, there's the whole history. It was a horse farm. Before that, it was Native American territory. You have the confluence of 2 rivers and a wonderful, what would have been then a wonderful hunting ground. I mean, the area you're at you're not quite Elk Grove, but
well, no, not even close.
But if you start heading further out in that direction,
I lived like 3 blocks from American River.
Right. I've never seen an elk. From what I've heard is when John Sutter first landed here, the first thing they did when they landed off of the American River was shoot an elk.
Yeah.
So there were elk here. There were bear here. There were
Yeah.
It's and now it's so urban. It's crazy. I've seen fox, around Del Paso Park, and that's it.
I've just seen there's deer on American River between Howell and Watt. Between Howell and Watt on the American River Drive, that was like a giant Indian village. That's like 2 miles.
That was a village.
That was like a city, and before that was like hop fields and stuff until like the late 50s and that, but potato fields too. But they were always finding all kinds of stuff in there. There was even restaurants. They found like, evidence of like a food dump. And
oh, really?
Yeah, it was huge. And then, they got hit with the disease before Sutter got here, and Fremont came through and saw it because he was on the American.
That's the other, and this is something that's falling into the lines of urban legend, but because I can't prove it, and there's other historians that are, firmly planted on this. But you mentioned about the disease, that came through here. The American River was named by Gabriel Moraga, I guess, the Rio de las Lagas, which is supposed to be River of Wounds, which was supposed to be for the 5 wounds of Christ type thing. Yeah, just like, Sacramento is named after the Blessed Sacrament, the whole thing. The whole valley is. So these...
Yeah, all California is named after saints.
Yeah, so the Spanish are hardcore Catholics, and they named everything after that type thing. But I looked it up, and Rio de las Lagas doesn't mean River of Wounds. It literally translates to River of Sores. And by the time Sutter got up here, which was a few years later, I had heard that the Native Americans had been wiped out by smallpox for the most part and couldn't put up much resistance. Yeah. So this is urban legend, but I don't believe Rio de las Lagas, the original name of the American River, meant River of Wounds. I believe it meant River of Sores because of the smallpox epidemic. Because if you're dying of smallpox, you would have a fever, right? Yeah. And if you're a fever, you're going to be going to the river. And apparently when Sutter got here, they found bodies near the river. They found abandoned huts type of thing. Yeah. And so if you're dying of thirst and fever and everything else, you're just going to hang by the river until you expire.
Well, Fremont came down from the north and met natives all along the way, and they were all really helpful. He ended up in Los Angeles. The Spaniards said, "Come on, go back to where you came from." And so they kind of did, but they were supposed to go east, but they ended up going back up. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, they came back down, and everyone was skeletons, and all the villages were abandoned, and skeletons laying out in the open. Wow. And that's here's another urban thing, is that the gate over Sutter's Fort has those spikes sticking out. Well, allegedly, and I believe this too, because Sutter was a bastard. He had put the heads of like Indians on their on the spikes to as a warning to the other ones not to get so testy. Because the natives here, they were from all these different tribes because the smallpox had wiped them out, and so they all just kind of, crawled over here. They were already a ruined civilization.
There's a tribe I can't think of the name of, but it's north of here, like way north. I don't know whether not as far as Chico, but I mean, and I've heard that they literally were the remnants of surviving tribes that banded together for protection, and then went as far as they possibly could from the miners, basically, because we talked about this in another episode about the bounty that was for scalps.
Yeah, they ended up on the Round Rock reservation that's like around Eureka or something. And all the remnants, they got forced over there. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of bad things about that. That's why you think that if there was such thing as spirits and, all that, it would be all over here because, we're
the largest slaughter of
died, So that's
largest slaughter of Native Americans in U.S. history, supposedly over 110,000 people in a little over 10 years.
Yeah.
And like you said, they were lawless. This was lawless out here, right? So you had people that were, law-abiding citizens back east, but out here they turned into...
Well, the average age of the first people that came out here was like 26.
Yeah.
So...
But 26 in that time period was a grown man, I mean...
Yeah, it's a grown man.
A 26-year-old 100 years ago, I'd say, is a hell of a lot mature than the video game playing 26-year-old you have today.
Maybe not. I mean, how do you know? How mature is somebody that just like takes a shot at an Indian?
That's true.
A guy wouldn't do that now.
Well, and that's the values that they didn't see the natives as humans.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And they should have known better. Just like the Spaniards came here and they saw, this peaceful, naked natives, and they didn't recognize that it was the Garden of Eden. They wanted to get everybody dressed, and, it's like, basically this was the Garden of Eden. I mean, even by description. And
I was reading, was it Burying My Heart at Wounded Knee?
Yeah.
And they described the Native Americans of California as gentle, very peaceful people. They weren't, they weren't a war tribe, really, Right. And most of their diet was acorns. I didn't know that until I did the tree documentary, but that just, when you have an abundance of salmon and all this wildlife around, most of their diet was acorns.
Well, that was like potatoes to them.
Yeah, exactly. That was,
so they'd eat that along with the salmon, the elk, and
I've heard it was 80% of the diet.
Yeah.
Now,
especially in the winter.
Yeah, and if you know what it takes to process those damn things, that's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. What else did they have to do?
It's
not like they had to go to work.
No, there weren't many.
I gotta go to the lumberyard today. It's like, no, man. They were just like, I don't know.
Weren't many options.
What needs to get done?
Except the black walnut. If you had the black walnut trees, I imagine you would have been in good shape back then. Because I'd rather be eating black walnuts than acorns any day of the week. Trying to put myself there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else we didn't cover. I mean, I think we spoke about the Jersey Devil a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah.
Or was that on the other?
I don't know anymore. Huh. But there's enough right here, I guess. Another thing about World War II happened is that there was a lot of abandoned dead babies, and in between 1944 and 45, there was I found 4 different cases of people that had babies and newborns, and just wrapped them in a towel, put them behind somewhere. One put it in a basement. And these kids were nosing around, these little kids, and they heard a baby crying down there, and they told their parents, and that came out.
Baby.
Yeah, and there's another woman, lived right on I Street, I and 20th, and she lived there with her sister and a friend of theirs, and she gave birth with her sisters just in the next room. in the bathroom. She like passed out. It was a horrible thing. And she just wrapped it up in like some, because, you know, it's like everyone thought the world was ending, you know?
Yeah.
It's like their person they met like goes off to work. No, sometimes they died out there. Sometimes they just ditched them. Sometimes, who knows, you know? And so a lot of people got pregnant, and there's at least 4 cases here in Sacramento where the baby was stuffed away and like killed.
Well, Sacramento has had historically a children's receiving home here since the days of the gold rush for orphans of the miners and gold rush. I got old footage of that.
But, you know, these were like girls barely out of their teens for the most part. Some of them were actually even married to a soldier out overseas who they hadn't even seen in 3 years.
Wow.
And so, but those all ended, you know, with the trial and stuff. I gave a talk about this a couple of years ago at the historic thing, the sexual historic thing. That town they had, that art town thing.
Oh,
Bill Berg had the bar thing, the West End bar. I did a thing there about it. But, you know, they all like ended where, you know, the jury was always understanding about that. And if they even got anything, it would be like probation or something.
Really?
And, you know, the whole jury and everybody, the judge, everybody bawling their eyes out. You know, hearing this sad story from this, you know, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, you know, waitress or beautician or factory worker, you know, and hearing this sad story. And if they were married, you know, their husbands were right on their side saying, you know, we'll raise the kid. And
they never talk about that, about World War II.
Right.
You know, growing up with, I've seen so many World War II movies. So many people have talked about the Greatest Generation and all that. But you're right. You never hear about the all the women who were left here behind, who screwed around on the soldiers who were overseas. And I got one personal story. I know this is gnarly, but when my grandfather was a very little boy, his older brother was a veteran, went off to World War II, and his brother's wife was staying with the family. They had like 2 or 3 homes on kind of like a joint owned property type thing. And one day, my great grandmother came outside to see my grandfather as a little boy playing with his other cousin out front with what looked like a balloon. Only it wasn't a balloon.
A condom.
And my great grandmother went over and beat the living shit out of that woman and threw her out. The whole bit.
Really? Out of the woman?
And as her, you know, because it was her sister, it was her daughter-in-law, right? And one that was her kid, you know, that was they had my grandfather very late.
Found the condom.
You know, but it went away. Apparently, this sick bitch blew it up for them, for the kids, and let them play. Like, she's just a real piece of shit. And so she disappeared with the kids, and I don't think Frank ever really got to have much of a relationship with his family, with his kids, with those kids after that. But yeah, that's.
Well, after the war too, there was a woman who lived in Land Park, quite hoity-toity address and stuff. And her husband was a colonel or something. And he came back and she told him that she had, you know, had a kid or something like that, or had an affair. And he like filed for divorce immediately, and she hung herself.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought, boy, that guy was a dick. You know? And these other ones, they were all right next to their side and that. Yeah. But, you know, there was like such a housing shortage there too, is that you could find this too. I have it, it's on my Facebook things. You could find it if you like. It was, this guy murdered his wife. Yeah, the place is still there. It's like on 8th and D or something like that. Yeah. And they put it right on the front page of the paper that, like 47 people called to see if that apartment was available.
Right.
It was like the day after the murder. And the landlord said, please don't call. We have to wait until it's not a crime scene anymore.
Wow. That's freaky. So people are like watching the obituaries to see when there's going to be vacancies.
Yeah. Well, me and my wife did that when we lived in Seattle before we moved.
Really?
Yeah, we'd look to see. Yeah, it was that bad.
Is that crazy?
Even got worse after that. But, I mean, we were like, you know, it's just like, oh, yeah, that's a nice place. I know where that is, you know. But, you know, it's like, there's nothing wrong with that because it's just to look out for the near future, you know.
I've thought about buying my neighbor's homes, you know, type thing, you know, but how do you approach that subject? Like, hey, you're getting up there in years, and I don't know what type of asshole might end up with your home. And so I was thinking, hey, maybe could you, that's the
It's a
worst.
reverse mortgage,
Yeah. Well, that's probably what it is,
Well, some guy did that to some woman at this great apartment in Paris, and she outlived him.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He bought it, paid taxes on it. He could get it after she died, and she outlived him.
Yeah. Have you ever heard about the gang initiation with the flashing headlight? Urban legend.
Yeah, I always flash my headlights too because of that.
Do you?
Yeah. One time, just for fun, I pulled a U-turn and followed the person.
That's funny.
just a little bit, just to see what would happen. But
That's funny.
yeah, that's a total urban legend too. That's not true.
You said you lived in Michigan?
Yeah.
That's anywhere near Chicago or in Chicago?
My mother's from Chicago, East Chicago, Indiana.
Isn't that where the killer clown,
Yeah.
stories come
Yeah,
from?
Gacy.
Well, Gacy's but there's been people driving around in vans dressed like clowns, scaring the shit out of people ever since then.
Oh, that was a few years ago. That was happening everywhere.
Was it?
People are dressing up like clowns.
But
Yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun to do that. To hang out around 20th and K, and dress like a clown and have baseball bats.
Oh my god!
Go stand in that alley,
Isn't that
just to see.
Isn't that Lavender Heights?
Yeah, well, not anymore. Really.
Not anymore.
It's kind of douchebag heights now.
Yeah. Yes. Anybody who's not familiar with John Wayne Gacy, it's 33 boys that he had buried in his basement crawl space.
Yeah, they're just doing a special on him too.
Are they?
Or there's a movie or something. He was horrible, man. He was a horrible human being. He'd get these guys, he'd put handcuffs on them, and he'd show them the handcuff trick, and they're like, what's the trick? He said, don't get handcuffed.
And then kill them.
And then he'd fuck them in the ass and kill them.
Who the hell's the other one? I was just thinking about Gacy.
Dahmer?
No, Dahmer, yeah. Dahmer's a sick fuck too, but it was something to do with Gacy. And then the dog's barking distracted in that one.
Yeah, I hate Gacy. I was kind of glad they actually executed him.
That's right, the clown. The clown name was Pogo, right? Pogo the Clown, I think, or something like that. Or maybe it was something else, but I think there's a pro wrestler here in California that's going by Pogo the Clown for years now. That's been his thing. He's pretty frightening.
I like Family Guy say it, Piss Pants the Clown.
Piss Pants. Not the one you want to hire for your child's birthday party.
Yeah, clowns. Clowns never bothered me because I could always tell they were somebody under there.
Well, have you heard about Showman's Rest? Yeah. I think it might be Chicago. Maybe I'm wrong. There's some city where there's an actual monument to a.
The cemetery for and
it was because of some train accident.
Yeah, in Hammond, Indiana.
Okay, is that it?
There was a circus train plowed into a train that was stopped, a freight train that wasn't supposed to be stopped.
Yeah.
And Hammond is just a couple miles from Chicago, the Illinois border. It's all one giant city.
Yeah.
And I think that happened in the 30s, maybe in the 20s. Yeah. Yeah, and so they buried him, and so then that's kind of where other Midwest clowns and circus people get buried there now.
And I've heard that's where the one of the clowns that came out of that was had his family with him, and they were all killed in the accident. He was the only one who survived. And they said from that point on, he changed his look of clown from starting to look more like the homeless hobo shabby clown, and that's to this day where that.
Oh, Emmett Kelly.
That type of I think that might be the name.
The sad clown.
The sad clown comes from that tragedy type thing.
Yeah, I always liked the sarcastic sad clown. Letterman used to have that. It's urban legends in Sacramento. There's more than a few. Hopefully, we'll hear about a few others that we don't know about.
Yep.
But ghost horses, screaming Native Americans on Sutter Fort.
Yeah, the original boogeyman.
The original boogeyman.
Yep.
We got ghosts of the Manson family walking around Midtown.
Oh yeah. The sex dungeons underneath the Capitol.
Sex dungeons underneath the city.
Could have been.
I mean, we got them.
Crazy stuff. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming back here again, Dave. I really appreciate it. And I think we're going to cut it short. We've talked about this subject quite a bit. And don't worry. You have no idea how much effort it took to make this one happen. So I hope you really enjoy the episode. And thanks, Dave, for coming out. And we're going to do this again, and we'll have a different subject, topic, and hopefully less technical difficulties.
Yeah.
So, anyway, see you next time on Cities of Blood, guys. Thanks for watching.